Joining us now, Breitbart National Security Deputy Editor John Hayward. He just had a piece out. Democrats embrace the 4 stages of ideological subversion. Joining us now, John Hayward. John, welcome. Great to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Sorry I mangled your name the first 5 times before I got you on the air. I said
that's all right.
19 different ways. Just so everybody knows, it's John Hayward, not Haywood, John Hayward. And again, he's the National Security Deputy Editor of Breitbart. Let's talk about your piece. It's so apropos, right? Because yesterday, right, I'm in Richmond, and we get 1,000 protesters, and they tear down the Christopher Columbus statue. What did he have to do with anything? He just went on a ship and discovered America, went back and died in jail. Anyway, he's gone. They threw him in a lake. Done. So when you say Democrats embrace the 4 stages of ideological subversion, John, what do you mean by that?
Well, this is a 4-step plan for destroying a nation so that you can take it over or rebuild it that was devised by the KGB back in the 70s and 80s. And we know about it because a KGB defector named Yuri Bezmenov did an interview in 1984 where he laid it all out. And if you watch that interview, which is embedded in my piece, you'll see that it's exactly what's happening right now, to the letter, to the T. Like you said, you can see it all around you. It's so obvious if you look for these 4 steps he laid out. I hate to say it, but it's a really good strategy. It really works if you do this. And what he laid out was a program that would take decades to set up, but then you could implement it in a moment with a crisis. The key moment is that you create a crisis like what we're going through right now, and that's when you topple the old regime, the old order. You sweep the old country away, and you replace it with the new order, the new way of thinking. And, of course, the KGB was thinking, well, that'll be Russia. We'll take over the country we're doing this to. And in the case of the Democrats, we have, sad to say it, essentially their ideology, the left-wing ideology, is on the march here. I don't think this is coincidental at all, by the way. I'm sure the people that are power brokers in the Democratic Party in left-wing ideology and in left-wing academia, they're very familiar with the strategy and they know exactly what they're doing.
So why don't we go through the 4 pieces of it? I'm going to say it's named by Yuri Bezmenov, and then you kind of explain what it is. It says number 1, demoralization.
This is the setup. This is the part that takes the longest. He said it would take decades to do it. And the process involves teaching a generation, really 2 generations, he said, of young people to hate their own country. You have to teach a whole generation of people not to believe in their old ideology, to hate their history, to believe their country was founded in sin, that it's worthless, that it's not worth defending. And you have to make them feel that way so deeply, so passionately, that they won't even listen to defenders. They won't even listen to an argument to the contrary. And look out your window, turn on your TV. We're there. This happened. He thought it happened back in the 80s. Bezmenov was talking in 1984, and in his opinion, it was already done by then. So you can imagine how much worse it is now. If we had a resurgence, perhaps, of patriotism, love of the country, national cohesion after the 1980s, after Ronald Reagan, that's gone now. Our new generation has been so comprehensively educated to loathe their country that you can't even talk to them, and you can see that in the streets and all these protesters. They don't want to hear it if you try to tell them anything good is happening. In fact, at George Floyd's funeral yesterday, if you were watching all of that, one of his family members yelled, "When has America ever been great?" That's their slogan. That's what they believe. That's demoralization. That means step 1 is complete.
Destabilization, step 2.
Destabilization is basically where you teach people to hate each other. Now that they don't trust their own country or their ideology, they don't believe in democracy, and the modern left doesn't believe in democracy. Are you kidding? Listen to these people. Look at what the protesters are doing. You don't get to vote. They don't care what your opinion is. They're taking over your cities by force. They're smashing everything in sight. They don't care about contrary opinions. And once they don't trust their own country and their own system, you have to teach people not to trust each other. And that's when destabilization is achieved. Everybody's broken into warring militant camps. Everybody hates each other. Everybody thinks the worst of each other. And that is a destabilized environment. And I think you pretty clearly see that. When you have people that claim they loathe capitalism, but they talk on cell phones, that's as destabilized as you can get. And I think the paramount example of destabilization, the flag that stage is fully and truly complete, is abolish the police. The abolish the police movement, that whole slogan is pure concentrated destabilization. What do you get if you abolish the police?
Chaos.
Chaos, anarchy,
Chaos.
the ultimate state of destabilization.
And then crisis, John Hayward.
Well, that's where you put the match to the powder keg and blow everything up. The crisis is the dramatic moment when all of this kicks off and you can begin the revolution. You can start tearing down the country that's under attack. And I think we really had a two-stage crisis here, a double whammy: the pandemic, the coronavirus, and the months of lockdowns, and then the riots. And I think these riots and this unrest, unquestionably much worse because of the pandemic. It would have been bad anyway, I think. Who knows what alternate histories look like. But I think it's much worse because people were already frightened. They're demoralized. They're out of work. They're nervous about the future. They don't trust authority because a lot of people are now seeing that the authorities were foolish. How can you listen to people tell you for months that holding a funeral for your grandma would be equivalent to murdering people because you're breaking lockdown, and then you see the same people giving their blessings to tens of thousands, cramming the street shoulder to shoulder and saying, oh, that's fine. Their political agenda is more important than the pandemic, so forget everything we ever said about social distancing. I mean, that is the perfect example of a crisis that is blowing a country apart by hitting its weak points.
John Hayward, how do you reconcile that? We're with John Hayward. He's senior contributor and deputy editor, national security for Breitbart. Go to Breitbart.com. He's got a piece up called, John Hayward's got a piece up called Democrats Embrace the 4 Stages of Ideological Subversion. And number 4 is normalization. Explain that, John.
Well, that's the calm after the storm. During the crisis, while everything is going to hell, the invading force, the people that are doing this to your country, will present themselves to you as saviors and say, vote for us, and all this will end. Vote for us, and normality will return. You can have your life back if you give us power. Now, in the case of the KGB in Russia, they would go into a country they wanted to invade, like Czechoslovakia, and they would march in there as an invading army and say, we're here to restore normalization. We're going to give you your life back. That was their pretext for launching a physical military invasion. In the United States, you can hear this in the Democratic Party's campaign slogans. They're very shrewdly, very aggressively leveraging the current crisis and saying, vote for us, vote for Joe Biden, and he'll rebuild the country. Vote for us and the pain will end. Vote for us and there won't be any more riots. This is all the fault of the bad orange man, and if you get rid of him, you can have your country back. That's normalization. Blackmail.
It's so spot on, John. It is, and it's what we've been saying here on this show for 3 months without actually putting it into these 4 points, just disconnected. I mean, I said from the beginning, the vaccine for the virus is Joe Biden, right? The day he wins, Fauci will say it's all clear. We have a new model that says everything is fine. Don't have to social distance. Get rid of your mask. Starting Monday, go out and eat and go back to school, and let's fill up the football stadium. So, and now with the riots and the looting and everything else, people are afraid of that. Gun sales up, as you know, dramatically the last 2 weeks. And so again, it's, vote for Biden, orange man bad, everything will be fine, he'll calm things down and your life can go back to normal. So you're exactly right. This isn't an invading army. This is about DNC power.
I think a week ago, 2 weeks ago, if you had suggested that if Biden wins, there will never be a lockdown, no matter how much pandemic there is, no matter how much the virus might come back, that the Democrats will now control things and they just will never do that to themselves, that would have seemed like a wild conspiracy theory if you had said that a week or 2 weeks ago. Now, who can doubt it? After you watched all these so-called virology experts go out there and say, hey, you know what? If you believe in Black Lives Matter, you're magically immune to the virus. Go out and have a blast. Have your marches. Who cares if it spreads the virus? Your cause is more important than the pandemic. After hearing them say that, how can you doubt that they would have leveraged the pandemic itself for political purposes if the Democrats win in November? And I think the amazing thing about hearing them say that, hearing them give their blessings to the riots, is that we've been told throughout this pandemic that it's especially dangerous to black people. Something like 80% of the cases and victims are black. For whatever reason, it spreads among that community worse than anybody else. And then the same people said, go ahead and have your riot. Your politics is more important than this stupid little virus that we shut the economy down over.
So that was a lie as well.
Oh, I think so. I don't know how much of anything we've heard is pure truth, how much of it was simply mistaken or confusion, or how much of it was politicized. But if you're watching the World Health Organization right now, that body that Donald Trump withdrew our support for, you're watching them change their story hour by hour as they recalibrate their advice in medical terms based on pure politics. They're hour by hour. They're issuing new statements over the past 2 days about whether the pandemic is still contagious, whether there's a second wave, whether asymptomatic people are contagious. That was the big threat. The reason we shut the whole economy down is because you could spread this virus without even knowing that you had it. That's why we had to shut everything down and lock everybody up in their houses. And now the World Health Organization, because of these riots being politically acceptable, runs out and says, oh, you know what? Asymptomatic people, they're not really that contagious after all. We goofed. I mean, it's astonishing to watch pure politics corrupt medicine.
And the WHO a week ago also came out and said that masks were actually counterproductive. I mean,
Right.
it's like
Right.
it's like now
Yeah.
like I'm in Virginia and everybody's got to wear a mask by edict because it isn't a law, so everybody's thumbing their nose at it, except in Richmond. That seems to be the mask central USA. Nobody else is wearing one, and the WHO comes out and says, actually wearing a mask for healthy people, bad idea. It's going to make you sick. Doesn't really do anything to stop spreading the virus, and so only wear it if you're around somebody with COVID-19 or an aged person. Other than that, it has no value. Actually, does more harm than good. I mean, this is coming out of the WHO. This is unbelievable. Now we've got, because you had the job numbers come out, so that blew up in the Democrats' face, right? Because Biden had a press conference scheduled for noon Friday. John Hayward with us. He expected to blast Trump and the economy, and it was collapsing, and vote for me and everything will be better. Pandemic will be gone. They had to cancel that. So now what are they doing? Okay, not opening schools, because if you don't open schools, guess what? You can't go back to work, because a lot of parents, in order to go to work, need to put their kids in school. So the second desperate act now with these blue governors is keep schools closed. So what do you think?
I think you're right. I think that is a way to make a lot of people feel like they're still in the throes of a crisis, even if the crisis is passing, even as the rest of the country says this is over, we're going to go back to work. If you keep the kids out of school and you say the schools are still going to be closed in November, you keep everybody frightened and nervous and feeling like they're in a crisis so that you can make that offer of normalization. Vote for us and this pain will end is going to be the message that they're going to hear. What really terrifies me deep in my heart is that all the old warnings were actually true. And we really are still at risk of the coronavirus, and there might very well be a second wave. And because of these riots and protests, that second wave is going to be horrifying if it's actually true. And when that happens, when the whole country is rocked by a fresh wave of infections, they're going to demand to shut the economy down again. They're going to say you and I have to go back into house arrest because the pandemic is coming back. And at that point, I think this country will blow apart. If that's what happens, everything goes to hell. I have no idea what happens next. We're sailing off the edge of the map.
You're talking about you're talking about the made up second phase or the second wave or whatever. Fauci came out today and he's scaring people again because again they're petrified that the economy's coming back and jobs are coming back, and so they have to not open schools, and now they have to stoke fear to crush the demand side. So Fauci comes out today and said, "Oh my God, second wave is coming."
Yeah, check your media, check your reporters today, check your mainstream papers, and you'll see that after a week of telling everybody to go out and have a party, have a riot, have a blast, don't worry about the coronavirus, all of a sudden they're all running stories again. Hey, it's back. There's more cases. There's more infections. More people could die. That is going to set the stage for a demand for a fresh round of lockdowns. And I'm telling you, people simply will not obey it. If you tell people in heartland America that they have to go under house arrest again because of the riots, because of these protests, they won't do it. It'll be full-blown civil war.
So then I'm over my time, but when you define that, when you say they won't do it, like what will happen? In your vision of this, because you pretty much nailed this, Hayward. So let's go a step further. I know we don't like to project what ifs, but you just said something. People are not going to stand for it. What will they do? What will happen, John?
Well, they'll very loudly refuse to comply, and individual people will disobey on a civil level. They just won't go into lockdown. They'll just keep living their lives, and they'll make it very clear that after listening to the elite say that all the protests were just peachy keen, they're not going to throw their lives away to fight the coronavirus again. I think at that point, you're going to find out that the Abolish the Police movement is very interested in policing you. They're going to have a lot of enforcement leverage to make you obey their commands, and they will use it. They'll go after businesses, they'll fine you, they'll sue you, whatever it takes to force you to comply. And you'll find out that abolish the police does not mean a smaller, lighter touch government.
Unbelievable. John Hayward, great segment. I want to thank you for your time with us today. Very insightful. You can read Hayward. Go to Breitbart.com. Democrats embrace the 4 stages of ideological subversion. John, it's unbelievable what is going on. It's stunning. Absolutely stunning.
It's so important. So important to talk about. Thank you for having me.
Oh, John, anytime. We'll definitely have you back. Hey,